Solo Leveling Volume 3 was the biggest disappointment since my son.
It's not domestic violence, kids, if they deserve it. That's a lie. I said that as a joke.
That was also a lie. I don't have a son. Solo Leveling was just disappointing.
So, today we're talking about Solo Leveling Volume 3. Look at that sexy, sexy Sung Jin-woo. Fully realized as the necromancer.
Pass.
He has flawed opinions.
Hey, anyone who's watched our ReZero content, what do you think about Seki's opinions?
Oh, don't go there. We all know Roswell is a sexy beast.
I mean, he is.
So with that being said, so we kind of left off Volume 2 on an interesting note. So I didn't really realize, because obviously we've said this before, but I read this as it was coming out week to week. Volume 2 is kind of a collection of chapters that aren't really good indicators of the series itself and like some of the mental stuff that's going on with Sung Jin-woo. And I think that's obviously to the detriment of Volume 2. But Volume 3 gets into a little bit more of the mental aspect. So the way Volume 3 starts out is we've got another dungeon crawl with another group of people. Except this time, he's actually with a couple of the people from the original double dungeon. The guy who lost his arm. And T.H.E, right? The healer? Is the healer there with him?
Yeah, the healer's there with him.
Yeah, so the healer and the guy who lost his arm from the original dungeon. And then he's also with T.H.E and a group of prisoners, because in this world you can use prison labor to go into dungeons if they're hunters, obviously. So they go into the dungeon, obviously, and this is not a special dungeon by any means, but what's special about it is that T.H.E, the guy who is in charge of it and is in charge of the ones who are coming from the jail, has been paid by a man to get revenge on one of them for killing his daughter. He's also genuinely a shit person who would have done something like this even without being paid. But he basically abuses his authority as a member of the Hunters Bureau to kill off people inside dungeons and satisfy his desire to murder people without getting caught.
Because dead men tell no tales.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is interesting because we see Sung Jin-woo kind of start to gravitate towards maybe an assassin class. Like, he gains a skill for assassination, and he's got his dagger, and so he's really going in what could be, like, fast and silent and deadly, right? And then after that, he gets to enter the special dungeon. So he got a key out of the, I think, Casca? I think Casca.
Something like that.
He got a key out of Casca's dungeon back at the beginning of Volume 2, and it was for the Demon King's dungeon, basically. And he goes... No, it was the Job Change dungeon.
Yeah,
he gets a key for the Job Change dungeon. Which is basically... Obviously, it's how he's going to choose his class, right? And he starts playing through it, and it's mostly undead things and monsters and stuff like that. He fights Blood Red Igris.
Is that what it was?
That's the knight that he fights, the really powerful one.
Oh.
Blood Red Igris. And I love Blood Red Igris because Igris is maybe the first example of a monster that he's fighting in a dungeon that has some sentience and sense of, like, honor. Like Igris is protecting an empty throne, right? The throne of his master. And when Sung Jin-woo throws aside his blade, so does Igris, because he wants it to be like a fair fight. He has chivalry and that kind of thing. So Blood Red Igris is an interesting dungeon boss. You know what I mean? Also, he looks amazing. I've based a D&D skill off him for our Fate campaign. He is genuinely one of my favorite characters. So you've got Blood Red Igris, and during, after that, he goes into the main part of the Job Change quest. Oh my fucking god, shut up. He goes into the main part of the Job Change quest.
Did you just tell me to shut up?
Yes.
You shut up.
And, okay, so the part I like about this is he is exhausted, right? Like, he just fought Blood Red Igris, basically the boss of the dungeon, and he is now being, like, beaten to shit by a never-ending army of really powerful knights. You know what I mean? And he's on a time limit, so he can't leave this dungeon at any point. Like, he has to be in here for, like, as long as possible, that kind of thing. And he is basically about to die again, and he has this interaction with kind of the weaker, like, a manifestation of all of his insecurities in his own mind. And it is, obviously spoilers, but I love this panel. It's one of my favorites since seeing the giant monster in the first Double Dungeon. I just think it's a stunning piece of artwork, kind of showing emotion and that kind of thing. So he talks to himself, and he realizes that he can kind of cheat the quest by going into the penalty zone. Because the penalty zone lasts 4 hours, and he has to survive like 4 hours and change. And so he figures if he lets his exercise goal run out, he can get into the penalty zone. And in the penalty zone, he knows he can defeat the monsters in there for 4 hours and level up a little bit before he comes back to fight these monsters that he's not ready for, right? So he does that, and then he pops back in. And once he pops back in, he realizes that the solution is not to just keep killing the knights. He has to kill what's controlling the knights. The knights don't matter. It's the magicians that are controlling the knights. So he starts fighting them. There's a couple really great pieces of art. The fights are really beautiful in here. And there's this reminds me a lot of like comics, like stuff like superhero comics and shit like that, but I think it's just a stunning panel layout, like full page, like him in like shadow and stuff like that. And so he kills them, and that means that he's unlocked a hidden class, which is the Necromancer. And the book ends on what I think is a very, very cliche. Does that mean...
They said the name!
Yeah, so he basically, he's thinking about the quest and knowing that he can summon undead and that kind of thing. And in his head he just thinks, does that mean no more solo leveling? Like, he can have someone with... and I think part of this, right? I love this, right? Obviously, going forward, I know, obviously, everything that happens after it. But this is kind of a testament to how lonely Sung Jin-woo is through all of this. Like, he doesn't really have friends. Like, we haven't seen him... He has a sister. But he really only has his sister. And now he's going through this kind of upheaval in his life alone. And to be honest, the fact that he kind of sees, like, the idea that he could summon undead people to, like, help him as, like, the equivalent of, like, not being alone anymore.
I don't know. I mean, he clearly had people, like, co-workers he was really close with.
No, he doesn't.
Well, that one healer went with him on a bunch of missions.
Okay, yeah. Like, the healer was.
But then, like...
But they didn't hang out outside of dungeons. It's very clear that they didn't. They literally only met up for dungeons.
Yeah, it was clear she wanted to.
Okay, but she was a chicken shit and he was a chicken shit.
It just seems like he deluded himself into thinking he had... Because people knew his name. People were very friendly to him so long as he didn't go into the wrong groups.
Okay, no. People knew his name because he's famous for being so weak, and because they knew that if he showed up, that meant that they'd have an easy paycheck. They clarify that in Volume 1. The appearance of Sung Jin-woo at a dungeon means that you're getting an easy payday.
Yeah,
which is why they see him happily.
You don't... this isn't the American service industry. You don't have to put on a happy face once they're in the dungeon with you. They were all very friendly with him, even as they were in the dungeon with him.
Yeah, but they weren't... But when I say friendly, I mean they're not the type of people that hang out outside. Like, he doesn't hang out with these married men that have 2.5 kids outside of work.
I don't know. I look at this and I think that is a product of his own... Not incompetence. It's not incompetence. Just his own antisocial tendencies.
Okay, so he's a little antisocial. Still... We're all a little antisocial. Fuck off. Fuck right off. Okay, so, now that I have summarized Book 3, how did you feel about Book 3?
The world building's still on point, and there are a couple moments I really like, but I don't know. I'm still not sold on the character. And okay, let me clear something up here. It's not that I don't like this character archetype so much. It's that it might even just be a case of disappointment. I'm saying that not like my most disappointing thing. This is not the most disappointing thing, by the way. That was a joke at the beginning, just to fuck with Seki. But I do have a little bit of disappointment with the main character, just because I don't know. If we started and he was already kind of overpowered, I'd at least be able to brush it off as that character archetype. But we started and he was underpowered and had, I don't know, an actual character and had like and like it felt like things weren't like he had to solve his own problems. That to me was so much more interesting than how he's solving things now, where I don't know, it just feels like, yeah, he's working for it, but it still feels like, as far as the pacing goes, that he's just being handed solutions to him on a silver platter now.
I agree that the pacing's a little off. I think you're right. It's moving much faster than I remember it moving, obviously, because I read it week to week. But there is time passing in between a lot of these events that you're not seeing just because all he was doing was exercising every day. Like, some time has been passing.
I think they're one of the biggest issues here is they do have that young him moment.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you look between book 1 and book 2, or at least the first parts of book 1 and when he like starts really getting buff, that transition's almost damn instantaneous. And I know it's part of the story, but because it was so instantaneous, it doesn't feel like that won't have as much impact as it could have.
Well, but that's the thing, though. It's not, and I think the webtoon doesn't really show that, because the point where he's buffing up in the hospital room,
Mm-hmm.
he's there for like a week, you know? And you have to think, his buffing up is supplemented by this system that he's been given. Like, he's obviously not building muscle naturally. That's very clear. But he is working for it. Like, he is having to do all these exercises every day. And the system is partially doing it for him. And it's starting to become obvious that it's all to kind of get him to a certain point and mold him into something. You know what I mean? Like, this system is doing this for a reason. It doesn't have to push him this hard, but it is. Like, deliberately. Like, he is being thrown into things that are actually... He struggles, you know? Like, he was not prepared for things this high level sometimes.
I don't know. It's just that contrast of his old self to his new self. When his old self just walks into panel, it's just jarring to me because it's so... There was never a moment where I'm like, oh shit, he has changed over time. No, it felt like it was just a new character. So when his old self walks in, it just doesn't feel as believable to me. It's not like this moment of, oh shit. Like, if you've ever looked back at old photos of yourself with friends you don't have anymore, and you realize, oh wow, I've changed and I didn't even notice. It could have had that impact if, I don't know, if I felt like it transitioned. And I don't even necessarily blame the story itself as much as I blame the webcomic in particular. Just because the webcomic, between when he's his old self and his new self, there's a visibly distinct art style. You can even look at the friend where they're very, like, the design is even different on the friend between the two.
Yeah, okay, and so that, okay, I do want to bring this up. This is an art complaint that you're having right now.
Yes.
So this webtoon is actually based on a web novel by the author Chugong that did not have illustrations. The illustrations are done by Dubu Redis Studios in Korea. So while the author may have okayed them, the illustrations are entirely separate from the story itself.
Like, if it wasn't just a straight up art style switch as soon as the tone of the story changed, I wouldn't have a problem. Like, if they had slowly over time changed elements of his character design, it might have worked really well.
See, but think of it this way, right? So you saw how long some of these chapters were, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let me put this into perspective for you. I read this week to week, right? One webtoon release, right, was only about 6 or 7 pages, so it wasn't a full chapter. So as I read week to week, his look was changing week to week, and it would be the same for those 6 to 10 pages, and then it would change again. So if you were reading this, right, in its actual week to week scheduling or that format, the change isn't so jarring. You're actually seeing it like move minutely as it goes. But the way that they organize the chapters in the actual printed book are much. So there's, in the first book, there are 2 or 3 chapters to 10 releases of the web novel or the webtoon.
Trust me,
online.
I can definitely appreciate that as a fan of as a fan of cliffhangers and such, where watching a cliffhanger once the show's already out loses a lot of the effect. Like,
yeah, I'll put them up on screen because I lent the first 2 books to Realm. But if you look like 1, 2, 3, even in the covers, you can tell that he changes between each cover quite dramatically. And actually, I think so. This is pretty much his final form. He's not going to change physically from here other than like getting a haircut or wearing different clothes at this point. We have reached like kind of his final physical appearance change.
I just think that because this is, but similar to how cliffhangers work when you're watching something that's coming out, this is an experience that is now completely lost to time unless you're a masochist who likes edging.
Yeah, you have to be really into that kind of thing to read it. Well, yeah, pretty much. Well, unless, okay, so the way this actually releases, I think, on the Webtoon app, and actually a lot of the chapters are pay to read past a certain point. So if you were logging in every day, you collect like a couple coins a day from Webtoon, you would actually have to wait a few days to pay for a new chapter if you weren't going to spend the money. If you wanted to read it via Webtoon.
Yeah.
So theoretically, you could get back that same experience. You just have to be resolute in not paying ahead for chapters, but waiting until you've earned the coins, and then paying for them as you go.
But, like, knowing you can say for sure, who the hell is going to do that?
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. I got lucky because I was reading this as it was coming out. However, I will say, Volume 2 was a little odd. I did not like the splitting of it. I do like that we're getting a little bit back to his mentals, and he's making smarter decisions in this book.
There's some interesting character stuff there. I don't hate his character. There is one moment I actually loved with his character is the moment where that one guy who abandoned him to save his family is dying, and he's just like, I can't fucking hate you. Like, as you're dying, I can see why you did it now.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's not, and it's interesting because at the end of the first book kind of ends on that closer of like, I don't want to fucking die, how dare you betray me.
And like, he goes all the way, like, he didn't talk to anyone who was involved in that dungeon, even the one girl that was friendly with him after that.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't even know he was alive, they only knew from rumors.
Yeah. So,
So I can't appreciate that aspect of it.
yeah, I feel like I'm trying to hype you up on the mental thing because I know everything that happens further in, and I know there's such a reason for him just being an entirely different person right now. And I love that reason, but at the same time, it's not evident right now. So I actually do see where you're coming from. His personality just does change quite dramatically, and in combination with the art in the webtoon, it does seem like you're looking at a completely different character from book 1 to book 2 to book 3. Which I'm happy at least that book 4 is going to even out in terms of character visual change. Because I think in book 4, the only visual change that happens is he gets a haircut. And he maintains that same haircut for the rest of the series.
Being clear, I don't mind like an immediate visual change if there's kind of a time skip. And like, say, and they very well might do this, I don't know, like, One Piece has a time skip at a certain point. If the art style dramatically were to change after that time skip to show a difference in tone, I definitely see working.
Yeah.
Character design switching after a time skip to me is really, really awesome because it's a good form of characterization here.
I think,
but it's so early on in the series and so.
Yeah. So the thing about solo leveling,
quick.
right, is that there are no big time skips in solo leveling in the main part of the story. There are moments in the story where they'll just make a note, like in the original web novel, that like a week or 2 passes and he doesn't enter any dungeons. But it's never longer than like a week or 2 at a time. This story is actually quite fast-paced. I think the entirety of the story takes place in maybe half a year at most, timeline-wise.
I think that just might be my problem. Is it's way too fast-paced for me to be believable to me.
But at the same time, like, I look back on it, obviously, and first of all, I did read it week to week coming out over the course of a couple of years. And second of all, there is a story reason for why he's changing so quickly and so drastically, and that is not evident right now. That is absolutely not evident, and it's a good thing it isn't. It should not be revealed yet, which is why I'm not going to say what's happening. You know, obviously, I don't want to spoil that, because it's so fucking good.
Yeah, but you can definitely see why this is in a way detrimental to my experience here.
I mean, I get it. It'll be interesting. Okay, so this is the last volume currently that's out in paper, in English. I do have the 4th on pre-order. It does say it will be arriving by the end of March. However, sometimes those dates get pushed back a little bit. Like, this one was pushed back by like a month from when the original shipping date was. So the next set of chapters we do, you might be reading them in the way that the webtoon releases them. I mean, obviously, you'll still be reading them all at once, but you'll at least be able to see just how many pages we got per week, so you can see just how little we were getting per week. And that might make somewhat of a difference.
Maybe.
Yeah, because these are big these chapters are quite large in the actual book. Like, this entire volume only has chapters 6, 7, and 8, and that covers like 200 and some pages, 300 pages. And that is not how it was paced in the webtoon release. I think it's like max like 10 to 15 pages per release. So this would have been 10 or 12 releases. Yeah.
I'm hoping I can appreciate the main character more as time goes on. I still really do enjoy this world. This world to me is very... It's immaculate. The world building is immaculate here.
It's a really...
I just wish the main character could interact with the world a little bit more.
You know what? That's another thing that ups going forwards. He does become more interactive going forwards. And it's because he's forced to be. So the whole thing with Kang Tae-shik, right? Mm-hmm. That's gonna have repercussions in the next book. Like, he is going to be forced to interact more with other people, disclose his new strength, and a whole host of other things.
I get. I hope so. Like, obviously, I can look at the series right now and say, man, I wish he just didn't have this ability so he could play around in this interesting world.
Look, part of the reason why the world building is so immaculate is because he is the only person with the leveling ability. Like, the fact that everyone else is confined in such specific and interesting ways is what makes it good. It's the fairy tale guild effect. Everyone's not learning the same type of magic. Everyone has different affinities and different levels.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the case that way, where everyone else is kind of doing similar things or doing a separate thing altogether. It's just him that's that different, and that's kind of...
Well, that's what I'm saying, but I mean all the other characters. Like, all the characters in the background are not also leveling up and doing shit.
I don't know, I wish we could follow someone in that world who actually is part of the world as it would normally be. Because I feel like what separates this from, say... Because I know the gamer does similar stuff.
Yeah.
The gamer is all, like, modern day high school, right?
Well, he's in high school, yeah, but the gamer has an addendum to his ability. In the gamer, he can actually extend party invitations to people he knows, and if they accept the party invitation, they are added to the system temporarily and can access all the same benefits and leveling abilities.
But it's not like it's like the world's supposed to be understandable to you and me as far. It's our world, just with the gamer ability.
Yeah.
Which I think inherently that ability works a little bit better there, just because we already know where it's coming from. It's not like we're trying to understand the world and this brand new ability at the same time, if that makes sense. I'm not saying it can't work here, it won't work in the future. I'm just saying, as far as where I'm sitting right now, it's kind of detrimental to my enjoyment of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we list off the gamer, but we compared the gamer originally because it's a very similar... Obviously, he's leveling up like he's in a gaming situation. But unlike the gamer, right, the whole point of the ability in the gamer is it is actually a video game ability. Like, that's the whole point. In this, he's not... It's not supposed to be, like, 100%... It's not supposed to be, like, a self-driven video game like it is in the gamer. Like, the kid in the gamer, he doesn't actually have to level up. He didn't have to do anything. He could have just ignored. I think he actually does. In the first chapter of the gamer, he's like, for, like, 3 years, this gaming interface has existed in my life, and I've just been ignoring it. That he can't do that. Sung Jin Woo cannot do that. Like, he actively gets penalties for not doing what the system tells him to do immediately.
See, now I just wish the system didn't penalize him. That it was something he actively had to go out of his way to take advantage of.
I cannot wait till we read more about the system.
I don't know. I think the system's just an asshole at this point.
The system is an asshole. I love the system.
Like, an asshole in a way where I don't even see it as an appealing villain. I just see it as kind of ugh.
The system isn't the villain. Anyways, I love the system. I can't talk anymore on this because I'll spoil everything I love about the system and later bits. So, we will definitely be back next month with the next part of Solo Leveling. Look forward to it. Like, comment, subscribe.